This is the start screen on Adobe Premiere Elements 2018. If we look to the top left, you can see Add Media, and here you can actually import video clips and still images from various devices and from your PC or Mac. To the right of that, you have Project Assets. This is where your downloaded clips and still images and soundtracks will all be stored waiting for use on your project. As you can see, we have a single clip here. It's 28 seconds long. It was shot on a Canon 70D with a 720nm filter. And if we just click and drag that onto the timeline, just like that, it appears in your video display. So the first thing we want to do with this is adjust the levels. Now in Photoshop with a still image, you have very, very fine control over a still image, where your black point is, where your white point is. Unfortunately in video, those levels are changing all the time, certainly as you zoom and pan. So you have to stick with auto levels. And to find that, we go over to the top right. Underneath Fix, you have this button that shows a couple of things that look like sliders. Click on that and scroll down to Lighting. Here in Lighting, we have this panel here. Ignore these little images, but go to Auto Levels. And there we are. That improves the photograph by stretching out the tonal range. So the next thing we need to do is put in the channel mixer. So over here on the right we have the effects button. If we click on that, we find a whole series of various effects that we would want to use. And here under Advanced Adjustments we have the channel mixer. So we click and drag that onto the clip, and you see the very first problem. It's gone bright red. Now this is not something you would normally expect. This is because there's a bug in Premiere Elements 2018 where it defaults up here, as you can see, to plus 162, which is entirely the wrong figure, of course. Normally it should look more like that. But of course we don't even want that, because the red channel in infrared work would come out to be 0. The red-blue would be 100. The blue-red would be 100. And the blue-blue would be 0. And that gives us an image more akin to what we would expect to see in Photoshop with a still infrared image. Down at the bottom here we have a monochrome button, and if we click on that, you can see that already it's starting to look very nice for an infrared image. If we just scroll through the video like that, we can go back again. And this reminds me that I haven't actually deleted the audio track from this, which is going to be very distracting. So right click on the track, delete audio, and it's gone. Now the next thing we want to do is go back here and just uncheck that monochrome box, and let's put it back here. If we go back to effects now, the next thing we need is the HSL tuner. Now HSL tuner is hue, saturation and luminance. If we click and drag that over onto the onto the clip, we can see on the right hand side the HSL tuner has come up with hue, saturation and luminance controls. If we click on the saturation, we can now tweak the red and bring it down, orange down to 0, yellow down to 0, green down to 0. This is aqua, which in Elements is actually cyan, and blue. I'm going to leave those two values just as they are at the moment. Bring purple down to 0 and magenta down to 0. Now you can see that we have the classic blue sky. Of course it's slightly limited by the fact that it's the 720 nanometer filter, but here you can see a very nice image in infrared with a blue sky. Unfortunately, part of the problem lies with the fact that some of that blue and cyan is carrying over into other parts of the image. This unfortunately is one of the characteristics of video, which is going to be difficult to get rid of. It can be done, but it involves a lot of track matting and that kind of more advanced technique. But for the moment, I'm just going to leave it as it is. The other thing we might want to do is in effects is to add some sharpening. And over here under blur and sharpen, we drag that again onto the clip, and its default setting is +10. We can drag that down to 0. Just be very careful, because if you actually use the slider, it's a very coarse control and it might well easily over sharpen. You can see what happens if I rack it up to its maximum. It's way too sharp. So somewhere around about there, that's 17, that we should do it nicely. I usually find that some sharpening is inevitable on my still images, and the same goes for video. I'm going to leave it at this point. I hope you enjoyed the clip, and I hope it leads to you experimenting with some of the other controls and getting some very nice infrared footage. Thanks for watching.